Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast today from New York in the USA, Dr. Daniel Laby, who's an esteemed ophthalmologist. That's hard to say, and it's probably hard to do as well, and also a sports vision specialist. Dr. Laby has over 30 years of experience enhancing visual performance for elite athletes and has worked with professional sports teams in various major leagues, as well as Olympic teams. He's also the author of the book Eye of the Champion and has been featured in a Red Bull documentary. Welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast, Daniel. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm keen to learn more about your work in sports vision. It's a really fascinating topic, and also about how you help athletes and individuals alike both maximize their visual performance. And I know there's a lot there that crosses over from just sports performance into everyday business. So I'm fascinated to learn more about that. Now, starting off our conversation today, what's the impact you aim to make in the world with your work and yeah, just being you?
Well, as you mentioned, I call it sports and performance vision. And I add the word performance specifically because it's not just for athletes, as you mentioned. This is a field, a topic, an approach, I think is the best way to think about it, of how you can maximize your eyes for anything that you want to do. And that's sort of the goal. The goal is to try to make sure everybody can do what they want to the best of their ability without any interference, any detraction from their vision of their eyes.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's it's interesting, isn't it, that it's something that, like, we've got five senses, or maybe there's more, but certainly five senses that we can traditionally work on and take care of, improve. Hopefully, we take care of them on the way, but we kind of take them for granted at times and forget that by really focusing on the individual senses and vision, of course, is your specialty, that we can enhance performance, right?
Although I'm probably biased, but vision is the most important of the senses. In fact, studies have been done asking people, if you have to lose one, which one would you not want to lose? And vision is usually the top of that list.
Mm.
Most of the brain is somewhere connected to vision. All different parts throughout the brain really depend on vision for performance. And as people that have poor vision, have significant limitations on what they can do and restrictions on how they can function. And so vision, certainly I think is critical to everyday performance, both in terms of sports as well as in, vocation, avocation, leisure, and so forth.
Yeah, yeah. I'm certainly, I mean, as a keen photographer, vision would be something that I would really miss. Yes. So I know you started off going down the path of pediatric ophthalmology. How did
Wording.
yeah, how did that focus and then the kind of generate your interest in sports vision, and tell us a little bit about that journey?
Well, I had no intention to do anything in the sports division. I hadn't thought about it, dreamed about it, considered it in any way, shape, or form until when I got to my fellowship at University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA. The director of the program told us that everyone had to do a project. There were actually two or three of us there, fellows that year. Everyone had to do a project, and director said to me, "Well, we have this work that was started by the last fellow, but he didn't finish it before he left, before you came, and we need you to finish it. I want that to be your project." And I wasn't really interested in that. I wanted to make my own project from the beginning, design it, what I'm interested in. And it happened to be work they had done with the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team that previous spring, a few months prior to my arrival. And we went back and forth a while, and I basically came to, well, didn't really have much choice, but I was able to negotiate a little bit and got to the point that I would be, if I was going to be the first author and I could design the research, the analysis of the data, that I would take this project on. And that started in 1992 and continued after my fellowship was over in 93. They flew me back. I lived abroad. They flew me back to Los Angeles every year for, I think we did 18 seasons with the Dodgers in total. And as I got back to the US, other teams heard about it. It was truthfully very interesting because it was an area that wasn't well known. It had the opportunity to allow for new research. It wasn't in medicine following a cookbook of what other people had decided was the best way to treat somebody. It was being able to discover what was wrong, what was different, how we can train it, correct it, or improve it for maximum performance. And that sort of was really appealing. And I kind
Mm.
of grew from there. So the ratio of pediatrics to sports slowly changed. And currently, I do 2 days a week in pediatrics, and the rest of the week is sports.
Okay. Yeah.
And the rest of the week is not 3 days; it's 5 days because sports day projects.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's lots of sports on weekends, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So give us maybe an example or two of how improved vision or how your work has helped to improve vision and what that's meant for the athletes that you've worked with.
Well, I think if I could think back and what we describe in the book, when I think back about um, what I've done over 32 years in sports vision, I think to encapsulate it, it's the idea that the athletes no longer think about vision as what your eyes do. They're understanding that what your eyes do is just the first part of
Mm,
vision. And it's what your brain does with that information, how you make a decision based on information, how you guide a motor action based on vision is what's critical to the performance. And I think it's a concept of something we call the sports vision pyramid, where each layer of a pyramid builds on the lower layer and it tapers up to a fine point on top. And if you have a good base, then you can build a very strong pyramid that will last thousands of years, as we see in many parts of the world. And that bottom of that pyramid is what your vision does with the eyes itself. Sharpness of vision, something we call contrast sensitivity, how well you can detect the target against the background, and how fast you can process that target. As we move up from that, we talk about how the eyes work together in terms of 3D vision and stereo vision. Then next level on the pyramid is how you make a decision, how you make a motor action. And if all those are optimized, then you're going to have good performance at the apex of the pyramid. And as that concept, I think, is one of the main pieces of what I've accomplished over these 30 years. Now we've looked at many different parts of that pyramid, many different levels in terms of specific tests. We developed a new test of vision that is much more reflective of real world vision as opposed to the regular eye chart that you're maybe familiar
mm,
with in the doctor's office. See, the problem with the eye chart in the doctor's office is that you can spend 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 minutes maybe staring at the letter, trying to figure out what it is before you give an answer. And if you give the correct answer in 20 minutes and someone else gives the correct answer in 5 seconds, you get the same credit, the same score,
yeah.
but certainly there's a difference in ability between those two people. So we developed an eye test that is very different than the regular eye chart that people look at when they have regular exams. This test that we developed, and this is one of the things I think that's a contribution over my career, is a test that not only shows small targets like the eye chart, but shows faint targets, lower contrast, and only displays them for a short time, so that you don't have the opportunity to stare at something for a long time. You have to see it quickly, and it's small and it's faint, and obviously it's difficult. And that's much more reflective of sports performance. In fact, it correlates with sports performance on the field, but also it's more reflective of what you have to do in everyday life. Think about driving a car
Mm,
on a foggy day in an area that you don't recognize. Low contrast, you're driving, so you have to look at it quickly. You don't see it very much. It's far away. You have to read a sign for the street to know if you're going to turn or not. That's more a test that tests like that is more reflective of your ability than an eye chart in an isolated, semi-lit room with black and white targets that are on there for as long as you need to see them. And so I think that test that we developed is another piece that's been very helpful for athletes and the general population in terms of testing vision.
yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating the eye test. I mean, it's interesting you raised that because um, as you can see, I wear glasses for distance now. The I always come away from those eye tests thinking there must be a better way to do this. It's so subjective because and as you say, you have as much time as you need. So can you read the bottom line and can you read the next line? And it's kind of like, okay, which one's better, this screen or this lens or this lens? And it goes backwards and forwards, and it's kind of like, well, there's hardly any difference. But if I had to say maybe the first one, and I thought that's not very scientific, really, is it?
Well, yeah, that actually is interesting because that happens with the athletes as well. And vision is a very individual, subjective phenomenon.
Hmm.
It's very hard for someone on the outside to tell what you're seeing on the inside because there's many factors besides just what your eye does. There's experience. There's mental status. If you're tired, not tired. If you're distracted. If there's no other noise in the room. There's also an element of similarity. We sometimes we use letters. I can tell you, for example, I've never seen the letter Q on an eye chart. And so if you think you see a Q, you should probably rethink it because it's probably a G or a C or an O. Um, there's a lot of factors that will affect what the result is, and it's really only accurate to about a line, maybe half a line to a line of accuracy if you do a test retest on people. And there's also a subconscious component. In fact, much of life is subconscious.
Hmm.
Our vision, we operate at a conscious level, right now, every day. But when you're in sports or when you're driving, it's very subconscious. And that's another, I have a chapter in the book about that. I have a picture, for example, of someone driving. You're out driving on a street, and there's two kids on the street, one on the right side, one on the left side, and you have a target in front of you. So when you're driving, if you're looking at that target, you only see one kid. The other kid is actually blocked out of your vision,
Hmm.
not because he's not there, because if you look over there, you see him plainly. It's blocked out because there's other distractors around it. And so, the eye chart is such an artificial measure of visual ability. It's 120, 150 years old, the chart. Um, Very widely used, obviously, but not a very great measure of some of his visual abilities. If you don't take into consideration all the other things that will affect how
Yeah.
someone sees the world.
Yeah. What one of the things you raised there brings up an interesting point because I'm um, a keen fan of soccer, and I've been watching the Euro Championships as we speak. They're running right now, and
Yeah.
and I also watch all the professional leagues, so I can catch up as much as I have time. Uh, and it's the same with other sports, of course. You see the athletes shoot this brilliant pass into somebody making a move way over there on the other side of the field, and you think, how can that person have seen that move? Obviously, they have kind of game plans and they anticipate who's going where, but at the same time, they do have to have the vision to know that the person is there, so that in soccer, so they pass the ball so the ball actually gets to the right place. Without the vision, it just blind training isn't going to do it. How do you bring that peripheral vision component into the work you're doing?
Well, I think it's before we get to that, it's important to understand that different sports have different skills, and that not every sport has the same set of visual skills. There are sports, for example, like baseball, where you have to look straight ahead, archery, where you have a target that's far away, or as you discussed, football or soccer or basketball, where you see these players making passes behind their back to somebody who
Hmm.
they certainly couldn't see because they were behind them, or you have in soccer people like Trent Alexander-Arnold making these passes across the pitch that are extremely accurate. Or you have a player, as we saw in the England match this afternoon, um, making a drop pass right behind somebody where he couldn't see the person, but it went right to their feet. Those are skills, and every sport's different. So it's not just people asking which sport has the best vision. Well, that's not a good question because
Hmm.
every sport has a type of vision. And in terms of peripheral vision specifically, baseball players won't have very good peripheral vision because they don't need to. Or if you're an archer, you won't need to have peripheral vision. But certainly, if you're playing something like maybe doubles tennis, or you're playing basketball or football, soccer, then you do need that skill. And it's multifaceted. Your vision was there, your ability to predict motion was there, your sense of hearing actually probably plays a role because you're
Hmm.
hearing where people are moving. Your timing plays a role. Every once in a while, you'll make a check to make sure that your estimation is correct. And neuroscientists feel, in terms of vision, that what we really have is a representation of the world in our brains.
Mm.
And it's not actually what we're seeing, it's what's happening in our brain, the picture, the 3D model of the world that we live in. And we just use the rest of our body to get information to build that model. And I think that's what's happening when you see these athletes make these amazing passes. They have really accurate, up to date, real time models of what's happening all around them. And they don't need to actually see it. They just need to have enough information to build a good model.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think it kind of speaks to how this might apply in real life as well, is that we're actually building up this model. And I know from the physical aspects, when I had cataracts done in my eyes a couple of years ago, and I had one done first,
Hmm.
and the other one wasn't as serious. And the eye specialist gave me the option of having, because I had the cataract that I had done first corrected for distance vision, whereas I was short sighted before then. So then I had one eye that was really good on distance vision, but I needed reading glasses on that eye. And then the other one that was good for reading, but short sighted. And the eye specialist said, well, your brain will adapt to that. Now, my brain had enormous difficulty with that. So I ended up having the other one corrected the same. So now they're both the same. But yeah,
That's a
it
very
is,
common. It's called monovision. It's called monovision, and it's
yeah,
a very common approach. And some people who are very binocular, who really like to use both eyes together for fine depth perception and so
mm,
forth, have trouble with that because now you've taken that away.
mm,
You've interfered with that. Other people who are less keen on using both eyes together do very well because they don't need reading glasses, and so
mm,
they're happy to see far away in one eye, up close in the other eye. But
yeah,
they don't have this. The brain doesn't have this battle between what am I looking at? It's
yeah,
blurry or
yeah, that's right. Yeah. But it does highlight that a key component of the vision is the brain doing the work to interpret what's coming in, right?
yeah. The eye. The people have to really think about the eyes as being a dumb camera.
Mm,
The brain is the mini computer here, and the brain is what's directing the eyes. The brain is what's analyzing what the eyes are sending it. The brain is what's causing you to blink and keep your eyes lubricated. All that is running from the brain. The eyes, there's nothing in in the eye that will cause a change in anything. The brain gets the information and causes the change. And
mm,
so, people think about the eye and vision, they neglect the brain part. And I think the brain part is the larger, more important part than the actual eyeballs.
mm. All right. So, how can these principles that you've been describing and talking about so far, and the studies that you've done in sports vision, how can they apply to everyday life for people that aren't necessarily sports people, or to business people that a lot of our listeners, of course, are?
Well, I think the first thing is to think about what you do. As I mentioned, every sport has a different visual profile. Every profession and vocation and activity has a different visual profile. And depending on what you do for a living and what you do for enjoyment, that will dictate what kind of vision you need. If you're a librarian, for example, it's going to be very different vision than if you're working, in construction, for example.
Mm,
There's a very different set of skills. You mentioned in terms of reading and distance and so forth. If you're a librarian or working with computer, laptops, books, things up close all the time, we're going to want to have your vision very comfortable up close. Your distance vision is important, obviously, but it's not the main thing because you spend your day with everything up close. On the opposite side, if you're, a police officer, if you're in the military, if you're in construction, if you're in something where you're driving a lot, where you're moving around a lot, where you have to see things at a distance to make decisions about what to do, critical for the distance vision, maybe the near vision is not quite as important. Your ability to react to what you're seeing, your peripheral vision. Think about the difference. How much peripheral vision do you need when you're on a laptop, right?
mm,
Not a whole. But if you're in those other areas I mentioned, your peripheral vision can be life or death.
yeah.
What you're seeing. So the important, I think, I'd hope that eye care practitioners, eye care specialists, would spend a little bit more time finding out what the needs of their patients are, or their clients, or athletes, or whoever you want to call it, what they need, and then designing the interventions, the aid for that purpose. And it may be more than one. You may have a person who works on a laptop and in business, spreadsheets during the week, but maybe in the weekends they spend time outdoors hiking and so forth in the what you call the outback, I guess, in Australia. And it's important to know what's happening in the periphery, what's happening around you, to have a sense of what's behind you, and so forth. And maybe there's several different approaches, different pairs of glasses, perhaps different training that you would do with somebody to react quickly. Not so much if they're on the laptop, but if they're outdoors, you want to be able to react to changes in the environment where you
Mm.
are. And so I think all these principles transfer very nicely over to non-athletes. Again, that's why I call it performance vision. But there's no way the doctor will know unless he's told,
Yeah.
frankly, what you want from your eyes, what you expect your eyes to be able to do, what you expect your visual system to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important. And I guess it highlights that as individuals, we need to kind of take some responsibility for making sure the doctor has that information and it's not just, okay, let's do an eye test. You're short sighted or you're long sighted. So you need that corrected. We need to take responsibility for describing, hey, I need something to make me comfortable in front of the computer for 8 hours a day or whatever it might be. But then on the weekend, I need to be seeing what's going on around me in a bigger sense.
Absolutely. People talk about medicine 1.0, medicine 2.0, and hopefully the future medicine 3.0. And, we're in many places, we're in the 2.0 realm where it's the doctor is reactive. The doctor,
Yeah.
if you come in, the doctor reacts to it with a treatment. Medicine 3.0 is a little bit different. Medicine 3.0 is proactive, is much more engaged between, patients and doctor to optimize for the individual what they need moving forward, both in terms of the present, but most importantly, the future. That's medicine 3.0. We're not quite there yet. We're still in the 2.0 reactive, treating diseases, treating
Mm.
deficiencies as opposed to trying to prevent them or to optimize function down the road. But I think the more people that have an approach of the 3.0 side, the more quickly we'll all move to that
Yeah.
area of care, which certainly will be superior to 1.0 or
Mm.
2.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of that sort of tackling, yeah, moving from tackling the symptom to tackling the underlying cause to 3.0, which would be optimizing everything to prevent any underlying cause. Yeah.
Precisely.
Hmm. All right. So for listeners who are kind of keen to improve or optimize their own visual performance, what are some simple things they can do to get started?
Well, the first thing is to get your eyes checked and be an advocate for yourself to make sure that the bottom of that pyramid, the things that you really can't fix yourself, getting the right glasses prescription,
Hmm.
and that may not, here we talk about 20/20 as being normal vision, 6/6 or 1.0, depending on terminology used in the country. Um, but that's only average normal vision. That's not the best vision. And what I tell all the athletes when they go to their, if they're going to go to someone, if I'm remote and I'm telling them remotely what to do, go to your eye doctor and tell them you don't want to just be corrected to normal. You want to be corrected to the best vision you can have. And so that first step is going to be going to the eye doctor and making sure that you have the best vision you personally can do. Vision is limited by two factors: one, the focus in the eye, and two, what the brain can do with the information from the eyes. And we don't want to leave any focusing on the table. We want to make sure the focus is perfect so that your brain has the best chance to work fully. So that's the first step, I think, is to have an eye exam, make sure there's no disease, nothing you have to worry about in the future, but also to make sure that you've maximized your basic visual abilities, things that you really can't fix yourself. Move up from that, there are things that you can do yourself, and you don't want to jump to this part because it's easier. You want to make sure you get the base good. It's like the
Yeah. Yeah.
pyramid. The pyramid base isn't good. You can do all you want on top, and you'll have
Yeah.
a pyramid that falls over.
Falls over. Yeah.
That's not the answer. But once you've done the first step, one of the things that I think is a really good general overall task training that somebody can do that will attack many different areas of performance is to learn how to juggle,
Mm.
juggling ball. Juggling requires concentration, hand-eye coordination, some vision, but not as much there. But the main things, the concentration and hand-eye coordination are key. And if you can get sufficient concentration and hand-eye coordination to juggle three balls, we'll say effectively and consistently, then you've achieved many of the tasks that you need to perform both in terms of sports as well as in terms of everyday function.
Mm, fascinating. So learn how to juggle. Yeah. Um, I I actually learned how to juggle a while ago, and you reminded me that I should get my juggling balls out of the cupboard again and see whether I can still do it and reteach myself if not. And this was in the context of it was a presentation by Tony Buzan, who is the founder of mind mapping. And I was lucky enough to be at one of his live presentations, a big kind of auditorium, and he had
Right.
the entire auditorium juggling. And I never thought that was something I could do, but within about 20 minutes, and he basically went through the process. So yeah,
Mm.
learn how to juggle. There's probably YouTube videos describing the process.
Absolutely, are absolutely because I've sent them to athletes to use.
Yeah.
There are also scientific papers that will discuss the benefits in sports of learning how to juggle.
Hmm. Excellent. All right. Well, I wasn't expecting that, but it's a great tip. Yeah. But get the base of the pyramid right first. Make sure that you have your eyes tested for any underlying issues and get the right prescription for correcting vision to the best it can be rather than just 20/20.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So one of the things I was curious about, you talked about um, Medicine 3.0. What kind of emerging trends and technologies do you see shaping the future of sports vision and vision in generally, I guess, for those of us not necessarily sports people?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting and most fascinating, productive initiatives that we're seeing, and we see that every year getting better and better, is the use of virtual reality systems to basically present people into situations that are virtual, but are very reflective of what they have to do in the sport. And in certain sports, that those abilities have been around for a little while, and certain sports are not there yet. For example, in baseball, to hit a baseball, it's such a short-lived event. It takes about 400 milliseconds for the ball to go from the pitcher to the catcher, and similar tasks as in cricket, for example. Very short time you have to look at the movement of the ball. The virtual screens and the headsets aren't sufficiently able to present the uh, the experience in a true to life form that they're ready yet for main use. But other sports, they are pretty good. And what that allows us to do is repetitively train, allows us to test in scenarios that we can design. And it's something that you don't need other teammates to be with you. You don't need other people to be with you. All can be done by yourself with a headset. The cost of those devices has decreased quite a bit. The Meta Quest headset, for example, is really not that expensive when you talk about equipment for sports or computers devices. The Apple headset, which is much higher resolution, which has a lot of promise, still is probably beyond the realistic price range for most people to use in terms of training. But I think it's new. It's only been out a year or so, and I think we're going to see that price coming down in the future. And so, what I see as an initiative is a movement in that direction where people are learning how to manipulate these devices to affect testing and affect training in many unique ways that are really quite interesting. One of the systems, for example, is called Reflection Go, company in Pennsylvania that has created different kinds of games that people can use that probe and test many of the skills needed for sports or for daily life performance, whether it's reaction, quick decision making, inhibition of actions based on what you're seeing, a change in what you're seeing, many different areas, what they call cognitions that are involved in the decision making process and the motor actions based on vision. And so I think that's an area we're going to see definite increase in options and increase in techniques over the next several years.
That's fascinating. That's really fascinating. And I think if we read the mainstream media, these headsets are kind of touted as games. You play games on them and so on, but it really is a lot. There's a lot more that can be done with them, isn't there? A lot more higher value stuff.
just like computers, people started playing games on Pac-Man and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think quickly realized that there's a lot we can do more on computers and shrinking them into phones.
Mm.
You know, my iPhone is far more stronger than the computer I had when I started out
Yeah.
in com and so people, and that's what we need. We need human innovation, to adapt these devices that someone else has invented to be more useful and most useful for everybody.
Mm. So how do you keep up with all these changes with all this technology that is available? And as you say, there's technology that kind of all of a sudden you say, well, this can be used to play games, but hey, we could use it here in this, it could have an application in this field.
Well, part of it is because I was a computer science background in my undergraduate training. So to me, technology and computers are second nature.
Hmm.
I started using computers not even before punch cards. Those of you who know what punch cards are,
Yeah, yeah.
I started paper tape, is what I started with. And there's the computer museum in San Jose, California. I went a year or so ago to see, and they had my first computer that I used in high school, and it's one of the first computers in the museum there. So that's very helpful in moving forward. Um, I certainly am sure I don't know about everything, but I do, through the laptop, have lots of connections where I get newsletters, and some of them I delete pretty quickly. Some of them I read more, and every once in a while, almost almost 4 or 5 times a week, there's going to be something I'm going to come across that's going to be. I wonder what happens with this.
Hmm.
And for example, this past spring, one of the articles I read was about a device that looks to see how your eye shakes. Everybody's eye shakes a little bit,
Mhm.
and that's important to allow vision to continue. We know that in the body, for example, if you pick up something and hold it, after a few minutes, you really don't feel like you're holding it anymore because all the receptors of pressure have been maximally stimulated and they basically shut down. And the true is same is true of vision. If we don't shake our eyes and change what those little cameras are seeing, just a short little change, if we just stare at it, we'll just lose our vision. It will go black. And so everyone has a small tremor. And I saw an article about a system that's able to measure that, which is new. We haven't had systems that can measure actually little retinal cells, little photoreceptors in the retina, and look for changes in their position, their movement. And it was designed not for anything to do with sports, but I thought, I wonder if the elite athletes have less movement, allowing for sharper vision, because if you move too much, it's blurry,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, in the general population. And we did this past spring some studies. There's a report that we're going to present at a conference this fall, and I just saw more of the data come over my computer today, showing the statistically significant differences between the elite athletes, the general population, and let's say amateur athletes. They're all different in terms of how much they move. Where the
Mhm.
ball players move the slightest, and the general population moves the most, and that's a statistically significant difference in those populations. And so that all came from just something that came across my computer one day, and I said, I wonder what happened. And
Mhm.
so keeping up with it is involved with trying to have your fingers in a lot of pies and trying to get a sense of, what's new, what people are reporting, and then hopefully having enough interest to say, how can I use that for this purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. I wasn't aware that our eyes were moving all the time, and kind of makes sense, doesn't it? That elite athletes um, that they have better vision. That's part of their gift, I guess, or their ability that they have or they cultivate, however they acquire it as an elite athlete. But obviously, through training, they enhance it and maintain it. But that they would have less movement because the vision is sharper.
So a paper I just came across, it was just a headline I saw that said, blinking not only lubricates your eyes. And to me, I always thought that's the reason we have blink is we keep the eye nice and moist. I know that if you're looking at something like staring at it for a long time, you blink less, and that can make your eye dry. I talk to my patients about blinking and so forth. But the article said that it wasn't only to keep your eyes lubricated, blinking actually had a role in vision. And that by similar to that movement, that fine shaking, by closing your eyes and opening your eyes, you're refreshing, if you will, the screen
Mm.
and letting your brain pick up all the nuances and changes that have happened since the last time you were aware of your vision. And so that's another area I had to look into more. I'm curious if athletes blink more
Yeah.
to get better vision? They'd be like, less? I don't know. That's another area that I came across. Just came across a headline that seemed strange, and that led to another question in sports and performance vision.
Mm. Fascinating.
Fascinating.
All right.
All right.
Hopefully that echo isn't going to come through on the recording, but we'll see how we can do that. Um, I It's a fascinating conversation, and there's so much more we could dig into there, but I'm just aware of the time, and I think it's a good point now on that note to move on to the buzz, which is our lightning round where I ask the same 5 questions of every guest. And the idea is you'll share some tips from your experience and inspire our listeners to go and do something awesome today as a result.
Absolutely.
All right. So, what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
To be creative, to think outside the box, to not listen to what other people say about what's possible or not possible, to purely go by what your gut tells you and what your heart tells you might be possible.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. So pay less attention to what other people say and trust your own instincts more. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and also I think coming through the conversation so far, it's looking at how can or being aware of things that are happening outside one's own field and asking questions like how could that be applied in my field?
Yeah, and people when you look at an inventor, you look at people that discover things, they don't discover something brand new. They know what's happened and they go a small little incremental change from what is already known. And
Mm,
that's amazing invention. And I think Einstein did that. Einstein's theories are built, just one little step further, a little mind experiment that he had. He thought about something and go one more step, and now we have relativity.
mm,
And so the knowledge of what's happened, and then taking that, not thinking you have to come up with something brand new that no one's ever thought about. Take what people have thought about and try to go one more step,
yeah, yeah. And usually when that step goes outside the box, as you put it, that's when you get a breakthrough, right?
when lightning strikes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
That's a good question. The way I develop new ideas is get a good night's sleep. And I have no explanation for this, although I'm sure that it's actually true, because other people have experienced the same thing. I have most of my new ideas in the shower, in
Hmm.
the night's sleep in the shower. I have no idea why, but it happens repeatedly, and I even think about how can I remember because I'll forget it 5 minutes later. So how can I write it down in the shower? I haven't come up with a good way to do that though. But and I don't know why that happens. I still would love to understand why that's the case, but it's not laying in bed doesn't do it for me. But the shower just is almost like it's knowledge falling from the faucet,
Yeah,
and it's just a matter of catching it.
yeah. One of my and I must look this up again. One of my guests, and this is going back quite a long way now. I can't even remember who the guest was. It talked about the same phenomenon, and I said I often have an idea in the shower, and then I'm sort of repeating whatever that idea was until I get out of the shower and I'm dried and dressed, and so I can write it down somewhere and remember it. And he
Absolutely.
told me about a product that actually hangs in the shower where you can write down your ideas. It's kind of waterproof and it's specifically for that purpose.
I don't take a shower with my watch, but the Apple Watch has a voice memo, and I have a
Yeah,
voice
that's right.
memo, and you can press that because it's waterproof. But so far, I don't think I've forgotten very much in the coming out of the shower because I try to make sure I remember it, as you say.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I use the watch when I'm on the bike and I have the ideas, which is another place where I
but
get.
why is it that the shower stimulates each of us to do that? I don't understand that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's it's a phenomenon where it's shutting down the brain's shutting down all the noise that we have, all the stuff that we're doing all the time, and because we're in the shower, we're not doing anything else. So the brain shut down all that stuff, and then things bubble up from the unconscious, and
Perhaps,
that's probably why it happens more often after a good night's sleep as well.
and I think that highlights the importance of unconscious function,
Hmm.
right? You know, we our heart beats unconsciously.
Yeah.
You know, what we think
Breathing.
about incredible amount of stuff unconsciously, but that's where you're going to get the new ideas is from your unconscious putting things together because that's what you do in your sleep, right?
Mm,
Your brain puts together. You have a dream that seems very strange because it's all these pieces that your brain has put together. You know, when you come up with new ideas, it's the same thing. You want to just put it together and remember it.
mm. Yep, exactly. Excellent. All right. Do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
Um, is it embarrassing to say Google?
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's Google branches to many different areas, but
Mm,
I usually start with Google. Now I have some my Google window. I have some AI stuff on the side, which presents the information, the similar information, just a different way. But to me, that's the most efficient way to put down a question that I have. And I don't want to so much get a written summary of some AI system. I
mm,
want to see where on the internet there are hits for this question. And then I can judge which of those places on the internet I want to go look at further. And that's what I like Google, as opposed to Chat GPT, where you ask a question, you end up getting a typed response, as if
yeah.
it's a lecture. And there may be some of them have references. I think that u.com or something like that has some references they put in there, but I'd rather curate my own information, and I just want to know what's available so I can pick and choose what I want and decide what's important and what's not.
Mm,
So Google.
yeah, that's a good point. And Google search is changing quite dramatically with all this AI stuff. I've actually found ways and learned some prompts and developed some prompts for ChatGPT where I ask it a specific question and I say, quote or cite all your references, and
Okay.
I'm very specific, and then I get a generic summary, but I get it in a form that's really useful to me, and I get the references so that I can then go out to the reference. So it's kind of like a Google search, but much more focused, and I
Yeah.
can go out to the references because I can see, okay, that reference relates to this particular aspect, which is what I'm interested in. So I'll go read the reference.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. I like to. I'm much better reading bullet points, and that's what Google search is
Yeah,
bullet
yeah,
points, as opposed to a text. Um, and that's the way I learn. I even in university, I wasn't able to. If I miss a lecture, I would be in trouble. If I couldn't read a textbook and get the same information. If I
yeah.
went to the lecture, it was much more clear, organized from my mind than trying to read text. And so the same thing with the Google. I don't want to read text from a Chat
Mm,
GPT or AI. I want to, or an LLM. I want to see boom, 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 and kind of go from there.
mm. Excellent. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
Well, to be honest with you, make a difference in their lives, right?
Mm,
Uh, just like if you're trying to sell something, you have to show value. People aren't going to give up, cash, which is the piece of their work
mm,
to get something that's of non-value. And so, if you want to keep a client, you have to provide value. I think that's true of the sports teams I work with. It's true of the athletes I work with. True of my patients. If I don't seem to be able to help them achieve what they're trying to find, whether it's performance or health or vision, then I'm not going to get anywhere. So I think you always have to be thinking about the other side of what they need, what they're looking for, because they may not tell you
mm,
precisely or explicitly, but your job is to understand from what they're telling you what they need to be, let's say, satisfied or to achieve the goal they're looking for, and that's what you want to provide. If you do that, I don't think you'll have any problem keeping patients, clients, or anything like that. So,
mm. Yeah. So the key point is really understanding their needs beyond what they may be able to articulate to you, right? And then delivering solutions to those needs.
absolutely, it's
Mm.
kind of business 101 um, about it. But there's no that's human life, right?
Yeah.
Everything is transactional. Everything in life is transactional. There's very little that is one directional. It's always two directional. And if you can understand what they want, they'll provide to you what you want.
Mm.
And both sides will be happy and successful.
Excellent. All right. Finally, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
The truth is to work hard. Um, I believe, and I used to teach, in university at Harvard Medical School. I used to work in medical school. I used to teach in high schools. If you can get somebody to work hard and dedicate to achieving a goal, I think everybody can achieve that goal. Uh, I think of myself. If I want to do this, I can learn how to do that, and I can do it. And I think that's true of anybody. The problem is the commitment and the motivation to achieve that goal. That's where people fail.
Mm.
I don't think, okay, I'm not going to be Albert Einstein. I'm not going to be able to create theories of, general relativity. I can't understand them. But within reason, everybody can be successful. And it's just a question of, look at the people who start working in McDonald's restaurants, end up owning, 5 franchises. Those people are successful. Success is something that everybody can get if they work hard enough and stay committed to it. The problem is not everybody wants to work hard and not everybody wants to stay committed. And
Mm.
those are the people that are less successful.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the word motivation there. So I think a key thing is to understand, well, what's going to motivate me if I'm going to work in this area, and I know it's going to require a lot of effort on my part. What's going to motivate me to continue putting in the effort required, and particularly at times when, and we all have these times when things get a little bit overwhelming and don't go as we would like them to.
Well, that's where the word commitment came in
Yeah, yeah,
because if you can get through those times, the easy times are easy.
mm,
Anybody can do easy times. It's the hard times that are more difficult. Um, and it's a matter of commitment to motivation.
mm,
There is, people who give up are the ones who tend to, have more problems in life, and the people that stay on track. I, always- I s- My wife and I were talking about this a couple days ago. Uh, if you look at the people in high school or when we were teenagers who were successful, they're the less successful people in adult life. And the people who were the nerds, if you will, are the people who are the more successful people in adult life because the nerds were committed and were motivated and were doing their job. And that's why they were nerds.
huh,
Right. And that ability and that commitment went through in adult life and they did well. People that were popular didn't have to do very much. They were popular right away.
mm,
And they didn't develop that skill set, if you will, to be successful later in life. Now, some of them are obviously it's not universal, but in general, I think that's the case. And that's I think an important lesson for kids to know. In high school, teenagers, where there's a lot of self assessment and self image questions
mm.
that don't be afraid if you're not at the top, you're not the most popular because you're going to end up doing very well for the next 50 years. Where the people in the 4 years of your high school may have great 4 years, but after that, the next 50 are not quite as pleasant as
Yeah,
yours will be.
yeah, yeah. It's a good way to look at things. All right. Well, thanks for our conversation today, Daniel. This has been fascinating. Now, where can people find out more about the work you do, get a hold of your book, The Eye of the Champion, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you shared?
Absolutely. The book's available on Amazon in softcover, hardcover, Audible, Kindle, in all formats on Amazon.com. Actually had a friend in Australia who was looking at for the book and was telling me the Amazon Australia site doesn't have all the versions. I'm not sure why,
Mm.
but they were certainly on there. He found it there. In terms of, I have a YouTube channel called Sports Vision by Dr. Laby. Several hundred videos there, 15,000 or so subscribers that has videos on all sorts of things in terms of vision. Have a video how to cheat on your eye exam. I'm not going to tell you the answers to that. You have to watch that video. And certainly a lot of about athletes' performance and eye injuries and things of that nature. Um, so that's a good resource. Even just looking onto the sportsvision.nyc website, there's information there, and there's a contact form if people want to get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to interact. I was on a video call earlier with somebody from Sweden. Actually, was on vacation in France that had some eye issues. I have hockey players from the Nordic countries. the internet, and with the times we're in
Mm.
now, the world is very small, and we can, as we're speaking between New York and your hometown, I can care for people. I can speak to people, help people interact, all over the globe. So feel free to connect on the internet. I'd be more than happy to help if I can.
Excellent. And of course, we'll have links to all those places in the show notes as always. So, as we wrap this up today, Daniel, what action would you like our listener to take out of our conversation today?
Well, I think the bottom line, I'm going to stay with that base of the pyramid. Get
Mm,
your eyes looked by a professional, so that at least we know that they're healthy and that they're gonna serve you well. As we started out talking about, vision is one of the most important senses, if not the most important sense, and you don't want to jeopardize your future vision. And there are lots of things that can happen to your eyes as you get older that can be avoided if you take the effort, make the effort, take the time to check. And so, to me, that's the most important thing to do first: to go to a qualified eye care specialist who can make sure that your eyes are healthy and can make sure that you're able to see maximally. After that, it's on you to try to learn, understand, maybe learn how to juggle and understand how to implement your vision for the best performance, whether it's in sports or in everyday life.
excellent. Great call to action and a great reminder of how important it is to take care of ourselves in general, but in on the topic of today's conversation, our eyes, of course, our vision. So
Absolutely.
thanks so much for your time, sharing your time so generously with us today, and for your insights, using a visual term, for your insights on the Innova.buzz podcast, Daniel. I've really enjoyed the conversation, lots to learn and lots of fascinating topics, and really looking at vision in a much more comprehensive way than perhaps we might have, or certainly that I might have thought about it in the past. I really enjoyed it. So thanks again, and all the best for the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. My pleasure. Looking forward to hopefully discussing more of this in the future sometime.